So we are in for a real treat next. Corrado De Gasperis is the CEO and president of a company called Comstock Mining. Corrado has been around the TOC community practicing and implementing theory of constraints in businesses that he's been senior managers at, been CEOs of. And he was given a challenge that was an incredible challenge. Came from a very high-profile position to turning around a relatively small mining operation, but not only turning around the mining operation itself. And it's almost in South Africa. We have an area here, Pelgrim's Rest, where the first gold rush happened. And over time, it's just basically been deteriorated. And of course, the surrounding community also deteriorated with it. So the challenge that he and his team took on was not only how do I transform a mine, but how do I transform all the stakeholders and the community around the mine? He is currently busy with an intensive process of recapitalizing this based on the results that they've already achieved. I flew to New York to meet with him to request that he come to do the presentation. He would have been here today, but he very, very kindly shared a video presentation that's very professionally produced of him presenting what he would have presented. And he also kindly agreed, even though it's really early in the morning there, that we will have a live video link with him to ask any questions that you might have. Before we'll start, we'll listen to his presentation that really is inspiring and fits in perfectly with the theme of our conference. How do you transform an organization, not just from fragile to robust, but to anti-fragile? Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Corrado De Gasperis. I'm the president and CEO of Comstock Mining. I've been a TOC practitioner for about 18 years, and I've applied this thinking over 3 different ventures, from graphite to steel, ultimately now in mining. My presentation today is about deploying the theory of constraints to transform a mining company into a flexible system that's robust against downturns. I believe we're part way through that journey. I think we've achieved a level of stability and robustness, if you will, but we're rethinking, taking it to another level as we define it as anti-fragile. Comstock LODE was one of the most famous, the most prolific gold and silver discoveries on the planet. Over almost 200 million ounces of silver and over 8 million ounces of gold mined literally with picks and shovels in the late 1800s, resulting in one of the wealthiest, most dominant explosions in the West, resulting in not only the federal mining laws of 1872, but also funding the Civil War and the North, also resulting in Nevada becoming a state early due to that support of Abraham Lincoln in the Civil War, and some of the most significant construction in old San Francisco. In fairness, the company really was fragile when we started. Really didn't have any form of strength or stability, and we started onto this journey of creating a more stable, ultimately robust company. The key aspect of creating this organizational stability was designing a system, designing an organization that could handle these kind of complexities. And that organizational design had to acknowledge not just the core operations of a mining entity, not just exploration, not just mine engineering, not just manufacturing, crushing, leaching, refining. Those are the core parts of the system, but it had to put particular attention to things like safety. How do we integrate the interdependencies of safety into the system? How do we integrate the interdependencies of permitting and environmental science into the system? How do we integrate liquidity and capital management into the system? So we built that system and we designed that system addressing all of those complexities that our goal needed to attend to, addressing very specifically the roles and responsibilities tied to the processes that enabled that system. So we created a future reality tree, a strategic plan, if you will, that really accomplished two needs. One of those needs was to create this stability, this robust organization. And we actually define those steps to mean organizational stability and financial stability, really achieving the need of real solid, robust organizational stability. We were venturing further to go towards a real growth mode that would have been enabled by that stability. And we built the other part of that strategic plan, of that future reality tree, if you will, to achieve sustainable growth. If you're organized departmentally, if you're organized hierarchically, then the possibility of having a seamless, reliable, interdependent system is almost zero. I'm proud of the people that came together, a different culture of people, a different passion of people, and I'm finding that any transformation leading to predictability, leading to sustainability, and leading to explosive growth has to have the psychology, has to have the interdependency, has to have this systemic inner operation. So it isn't just the design of the system, it's staffing it with great people who understand the goal of the system, who interdepend in achieving the goal of the system, and maybe most critically, are always willing to subordinate to the system. We had to sketch an initial concept of a systemic design. We then had to increase the specificity of those interdependencies and pieces, but ultimately we had to staff it and build it as a live operating system. And to do that, you need to map processes. To do that, you need to define the measurement system. And in our systemic organization, we have statistical control measurements. In other words, the processes have control charts, behavior charts, monitoring at 3 sigma, the predictability, but the processes also subordinate to the constraint and subordinate to throughput. So we measure throughput. We measure the rate at which we generate throughput at the constraint. We measure operating expense. We measure reliability. When we combine the throughput-based measurements and the statistical control, we find that we get reliability. We find that we can achieve sustainability. And frankly, the more intimate we get with the system and that model, the quicker we get breakthrough. What I found fascinating in developing these work processes and developing the measurements around the work processes was that we were hiring people in the absence of that. So we would hire the people, we would assure ourselves that they had the technical and philosophical frameworks that we needed, but then they came in, they assessed the overall system design, and they mapped out the new processes. They connected their processes to their interdependent counterparts. And in that way, the system built itself. We can exploit the system. We can create wealth, not just from mining. So we've expanded that goal to include the geology, of course, but also the historical relevance of the district, the environmental power of our approach, and the economics that go with all of the above. To be a part of the revival of modern mining on one of the most prolific mining districts in the world, like cohabitating with Virginia City and Gold Hill and Silver City and some of the most profound historical mining towns and mining districts on the planet, not only cohabitating but collaborating on the diverse economies, including mining, including tourism, including light industrial. It's really the model for how a territory, how public and private enterprises can work together as part of a greater system, as part of a greater enterprise. And when you have that kind of interdependency and that kind of reliability, you start to transform robust.
We quickly found ourselves in a direct conflict with the community and a perception of a strong deteriorating quality of life. The community felt that their livelihood and their quality of life was being threatened, and it wasn't until we really surfaced the assumptions around the conflict and formulated a common goal together that we were able to move forward.
So it's not just profiting from selling gold and silver. We're elevating the value of the lands, we're elevating the history, we're elevating the culture, we're elevating the environment without conflict to making money. So we don't see how the socially responsible broader system is in conflict with the most profitable system. When we expanded that definition of the goal, or the breadth of the goal, we had to reevaluate the approach to growth. And one of the things we acknowledged is it wasn't just sufficient to be socially responsible and to be environmentally protective. We had to go beyond protecting and preserving. We had to go towards rebuilding. We had to go towards reconstructing, in some cases through the elevation of this culture and even the celebration of the historic district. And in doing that, we created a network that went way beyond the normal business enterprise of exploring, mining, and producing. We went into the regulatory realm, we went into the political realm, not just to have support, but to celebrate the history and celebrate the Comstock as an entirely new enterprise. So now that we understand this breakthrough thinking, now that we understand the magnitude of difference between anti-fragile and sustainable, anti-fragile and robust, we have to rethink innovatively the breakthroughs that are required to achieve that state. So as we think about the enterprise as a system, and we think about going beyond robust, we start to envision a whole new system. A system that doesn't just refine and sell bullion, but one that will sell value-added products at 3, 4, 10 times the value equation of just a pure commodity. We envision a system that will sell jewelry. We envision a system that will take the brand of the Comstock, sell it into fashion, sell it into art, sell it into the architecture of the historic district. We see museums, we see even elevating to the level of a Tiffany's level brand for the Comstock pure metals. Ultimately, even financial services, physical gold fund, not ruling out physical silver fund. So even though we're at the front end of transforming from fragile to robust, and now robust to anti-fragile, we already are conceiving a whole different model. As we achieve stability and as we achieve the strength of our system, our initial inclination was to sell more gold and silver, to ramp up and sell more of the commodity, which is relatively easy to do. But it struck us that we were missing something, that we were still subject, in some cases violently, to the volatilities of the gold and silver price. And as we started to think about a whole new enterprise, where we're selling value-added products, where we're selling culture, where we're selling history, where we're selling fashion, we're selling Comstock pure, we had to elevate the offer, elevate the delivery into the market of a whole new brand of products. It takes a whole different competency of our team to be able to understand the needs of the market, segment the needs of the market, and sell these valuable products to the right market and the people who appreciate them. We differentiate our product with a few fundamental tenets that we don't believe can be replicated. First and foremost, we're made in the United States. Secondly, we're made in the most socially and environmentally responsible way. Third, we're Comstock pure. 4.9 purity coming from the Comstock in the historic district that represents the West, that represents the frontier of mining, that represents the frontier of money. That's how we differentiate our value-added products from any other mining venture on the planet. We started this transformation having to design and staff an organization that could handle these complexities. But as we marched up the steps of that transformation, literally as we marched towards the stability need in our future reality tree, we had to build the infrastructure. We had to operationalize the system. We had to make our first pour. We had to ensure that our capital base, our financial base, was sufficiently funded to achieve the objective. And even that wasn't sufficient. Ultimately, to get to a point where we had organizational and financial stability, we actually had to communicate our method of wealth creation. We had to communicate our socially responsible approach, because even if we were successful, if people didn't understand that we were doing it the right way, we would have opposition. After building that system, all of the processes and interdependencies, we had to step back and say, what do we do next? And we realized to grow, we needed a plan that visibly protected, preserved, restored, enhanced, and ultimately celebrated the Comstock District. That's when we started to have the inclination that this was bigger than just a mine. Even though we've transformed the company and achieved the level of stability, we took it further, understanding more intimately the system, understanding the interdependencies of the system, and ultimately, I would say, becoming intimate with those variations statistically, so that we could create a robust system.
But we see with these unpredictable events that robust is not sufficient. And we have to start thinking about how we transform this robust, sturdy little business into an entirely different enterprise, a system that can move faster, a system that could be much more flexible in addressing these market volatilities.
We've been dealing with very unpredictable, very difficult to manage volatilities and variations just within our own system. We had to build a system capable of handling these kind of complexities. These complexities normally come with long lead times for construction, extremely long lead times for regulatory permitting, the added complexity that geology and mine engineering is not a precise science, and the cumulative effect of all of that variation required us to build an organization, build a system, if you will, capable of handling that kind of complexity, capable of handling the knowable variations, albeit them large, in a mining venture, especially a mining startup venture. So basically, this is what we get. We've built the system, we've transformed the way that we're mining, we're measuring throughput, we're controlling it statistically. So we get to robust. Great, wow, amazing. Most people would think we're done. We're not done. Why? Because an asteroid could come out of the sky and blow us out of the freaking water. Now we got to rethink the whole thing and say, how do we exploit these variations? So it's not a question of just managing them. It's a question of exploiting them. But I would say to you that you cannot exploit them if you don't understand them. So you cannot leapfrog, in my opinion, right? The transformation of the system to systemic, the stability of the system statistically, you can't leapfrog that. You can't say, hey, an asteroid's going to take me out, so why bother? I might as well be. You can't do that. You have to establish a system. You have to understand its measurements and its approach to achieving the goal. And then when that understanding becomes intimate, when that team's interdependency becomes reliable, you're in a position to have a breakthrough. And in my opinion, this discussion about Antifragile is a discussion about breakthroughs. If you don't position yourself to break through, then let's just wait around to be taken out. I never would have imagined in building this system that we would be celebrating Nevada's sesquicentennial, their 150th year anniversary, with our governor, with our senators, with our local politicians, with our state's historical preservation officer, all in an effort to raise money to enhance this incredible territory. Today you can visit Virginia City, you can tour the Old West, intact, operational. You can visit old mines, take mine tours, you can go into a saloon, and at the same time, you can experience high-tech modern mining activities operating side by side and interdependently.
Good morning, Corrado. That was really inspirational. Thank you so much for sharing that story and making the effort in producing such a professional video. We have a group of around 170 people sitting in the audience. Thank you again so much for signing up so early in the morning to answer any questions that the team might have. So we have a person with a roaming microphone here. You will go around if there's any questions. If they don't, I have some questions for you. So we'll start off and open it up for any questions.
According to you, what is the most essential requirement of or from a CEO when affecting change in an organization?
Good question. Thank you. You know, this was my third transformation that I've been involved in as a CEO. And ironically, it was the first one that I built a team from scratch rather than turning an existing team around. And even more ironically, that we created some of the same problems that we're normally used to fixing. But to answer your question, I think it's absolutely critical from a leadership perspective and from a CEO perspective that we have the alignment of the goal, the system is aligned with the goal, and that the system is designed so that everyone understands their interdependency to the goal, and that the CEO himself subordinates to the system. So to me, the strongest aspect of leadership is to actually subordinate to the system the way that you need the rest of the interdependent parts to do. And connecting those pieces is important, but I found that enabling others to do that and truly subordinating to whatever the needs of the system might be, reflects the strongest enabler to get to the goal. Having said that, it's a challenge. It's a challenge to empower the system. And frankly, I think one of the key messages in the presentation is to find the right people in the right role to do that.
Awesome. Great question and great answer, Corrado. Any more questions from the audience? Come on, don't be shy. You woke up very early for us. Corrado, while we're waiting, if there's any more questions, maybe one for my side. In South Africa, as you're probably aware of, we have a perfect storm at the moment for mining. We have extremely low commodity prices. Margins are under massive pressure from shareholders. They're really struggling to find the cash to recapitalize the mines. The ore is getting deeper and deeper. It's more costly to extract it out. At the same time, because of the pressure on the margins, they can't afford to pay the unions the type of salaries that everybody agrees that they should be earning. So they're facing an absolute perfect storm. You've gone through this experience already. I'm sure you've had many opportunities to learn from your experience, to learn from the mistakes that could have been made, to try and pull everybody together in the same direction. Is there any insights that you have to share with the South African mining community?
Yeah. That storm is, it's manifested itself in South Africa very strongly, but it is also currently the pervasive paradigm in the industry globally. Each jurisdiction has different flexibilities, different challenges, but that is really the paradigm. Grades are getting lower. The cost to extract, certainly on a per ounce basis, is getting higher. And it's becoming more and more difficult with longer and longer lead times
to recover from. And if I took anything away from the concept, the breakthrough notion of anti-fragile, it was that we have to build systems that aren't just more reliable, not just more predictable. And I use those terms almost synonymously. Predictability gives you reliability, vice versa. But there has to be a more tremendous effort on flexibility of the system. So the mining companies have a very rigid notion that has long lead times, our biggest nemesis, long lead times, and heavy capital requirements, right? There's no better formula for promoting critical change, right? If we don't have solid projects and solid flexibility, we won't survive. In the U.S. alone, there were 5 junior miners that came onto the landscape in the last 5 years. We were one of them. 4 of them have filed bankruptcy.
Wow.
So I came in looking at those companies as models, and now I'm looking at them as distressed. And what I learned also the hard way is that as we committed the capital and committed the resource, it was almost like the Titanic, right? We set the ship out to sail, but it either reaches its destination or dies. And in this concept of anti-fragile, I said, how do we use the theory of constraints? How do we use systemic management? How do we use stronger, reliable, quicker interdependencies, shorter lead times to make the system much more flexible? And I actually went in, here's an ironic point, I went in because of our notions of control, our good notions of control, our good notions of measurement. I wanted to control the whole system, meaning own it, meaning not work as much with contractors or third parties. What I'm finding is with the right interdependency, with the right formulated cooperating agreements, we have so much more flexibility. So for us, the covenant with the employees changed dramatically. With us, the covenants with the partners changed dramatically. In meticulous terms, we shifted a significant amount of OE to TVC, right? We made it much more variable, much more flexible, but also faster, more reliable, more able to react, right? And so in a funny way, I thought about the industry. The industry drills and develops when gold prices are very high. And then it seems to produce when gold prices are very low. and that's just the effect of not being planned in fast enough. But to create a company where you say, when gold prices are low, we want to be able to shift to drilling and development. And when gold prices are high, we want to be able to increase production. It sounds very simple and idealistic, but it's incredibly difficult. The system has to be designed very differently. Now, as I started thinking about anti-fragile, I said, what kinds of breakthroughs does this design enable? And in fairness, and in the video, I made the point that we're just starting to rethink about that whole side of our plan now, because I feel like we've got the reliability, we've got the stability, even in a tough market. But how do we exploit that for growth? How do we exploit that for breakthrough? And what's happening is the system went from being rigid internal to being more flexible, expanded, to now extending that thinking to our regulators, extending that thinking to our local community, and we're creating I want to use the term network economy, that we're the hub of, we're the nucleus of, but the tentacles are going out so much further. That gives us flexibility, it gives us strength, but it also now is starting to present opportunities. And in that last piece, I was saying, we're not just going to sell the commodity. We're just not going to ramp up production. We'll sell products, we'll sell services, we'll sell the brand, right? And ultimately, the vision, and it may not, I don't know what the time frame of this would be, but there could be a scenario where you wouldn't need the mine to be operating to be sustainable at all. And that would be, in my mind, a part of this breakthrough thinking.
Amazing answer. Corrado, just from the TOCICO, we really appreciate you sharing this incredible story. All I can say is I think that Comstock Mining is extremely lucky to have the type of person like you are that are leading this organization. I know it's not easy. I know it's been really challenging. When we met in New York, you shared with me some of these challenges that you guys have overcome. But, you know, from here it can only strengthen. Like in Antifragile, you will become stronger every time the system is stressing. And I think a lot of other industries can also learn from this. So thank you again for waking up so early and taking these live questions from us and sharing your video presentation in such a professional way. Thank you again.
You're welcome.